Hello, my name is Jenna Varnell, and I am a freshman at NC State University. Today we're going to talk about the relationship between math performance and music participation. So, why I chose this topic: I am a math education major, and I hope to one day include music in my lesson plans so students can understand the material better and also see that math really is fun. Students can also see that math is involved in the everyday things they do, like listening to music in the car. So the first question asks, does a participation in music produce higher math scores? So study number 1 used 150 children ages 5 to 10, and they were divided into 4 groups. One group learned an instrument at home, one learned an instrument at school, one took visual arts classes, and one took no arts classes whatsoever. Testing was done every 6 months. After a year, there was very little difference, but after 18 months, the score of the music groups scored higher. After 2.5 years, the music groups were actually scoring 14 to 18% higher on math tests. In a second study, 112,000 student records were looked at in British Columbia. 13% of these students had participated in at least one music course. The music courses that were counted were courses where you had to produce music yourself, like ensembles and orchestras and such. Students who were highly engaged in music had higher exam scores. The study actually shows that instrumental had a more profound difference over vocal. So why does this happen? There are some theories. Learning to play a musical instrument and also playing in an ensemble with other people is very demanding. It uses skills that kids may not otherwise develop. These skills enhance the child's cognitive capacities and self-efficiency. And there is an irony in cutting music from schools' budgets, and we'll talk about this later in the presentation. Another theory is that studies show that the correlation strengthens with time, so the longer you do music, the more difference you'll see in your math scores. Music participation helps transfer information from one hemisphere of the brain to the other. So you can imagine how this would help in your math when you have 2 hemispheres in your brain and the communication is getting faster. Music also calls for this creativity, which is the highest cognitive processing that a lot of kids don't always call forth that they can really do, and they just never apply it. A little more research done. There is suggestions that music students use the same part of the brain as adolescents learning algebra. Practicing music strengthens neural connections, and some research even suggests that studying music before the age of 7 can cause physical differences in the brain. I started playing piano around 6 years old, so maybe I have this physical difference in my brain. I'm not very sure. It is also said that playing a musical instrument provides a full brain workout. So another aspect on how music helps with math scores is math anxiety. So I know not everyone has heard of this, but it's basically where a student gets very nervous when they see math problems, and it can make them perform very poorly on math tests. So it can be a major problem for some students, but music can help by lowering blood pressure. Listening to music can stimulate one side of the brain more than the other, causing balance in the brain. So if you want to stimulate the left hemisphere, listen to upbeat and major tones. But if you want to stimulate the right hemisphere, listen to classical and minor tones. So the left hemisphere of the brain is the mathematical side. So if I wanted to balance my brain while doing a math problem, I would most likely want to listen to classical or minor tones. So, back to the theory of music participation activates both hemispheres of the brain. So we already talked about the left hemisphere excels in mathematical precision, but the right hemisphere is your creative side. So when you play a musical instrument, you're using both hemispheres, and it's strengthening the corpus callosum, which is the bridge between the two hemispheres. This will make communication between your two hemispheres faster, and overall you'll just be better at math because the communication is better in your brain. So another question that has been posed, are these higher scores we're seeing due to privilege, or is it actually because of the music? Studies show higher math scores for music students, but they also show students from wealthier families get higher scores on SATs. So which one is it? So the statistics of math scores being higher for music students have held true regardless of the student's socioeconomic status. Music education in schools are the primary source for low-income families, yet these programs are being cut. This is the only place that privilege takes place, whenever a low-income family cannot get access to music education. So, in conclusion, music education is very important. It improves scores across the board. I saw several studies. It wasn't just math, it was also English, and it was also science. Music embedded in curriculum improves cognitive and motor skills, which overall improves the ability of a student to be educated. It has been shown to be most beneficial to less privileged kids. Cutting music education is illogical because higher scores will increase a school's budget. So a few ways as a math teacher that I can put music in my lesson plans. Fractions can be seen as time signatures. You can see how one number is over the other, and you can turn them into fractions, and that may help students who know music and don't know math how to read fractions. The Fibonacci sequence is embedded in scales. So if you look at the C scale, there is actually 13 notes from C to C. And then if you look at the white keys, there's 8. And then if you look at the black keys, there's 5 black keys. But the black keys are separated into groups of 3 and 2. And this is the Fibonacci sequence going from 13 downward. Another way is introducing the frequency and pitch. So, I think we've all heard of Pythagorean theorem. Well, the same guy that came up with that also came up with the frequency and pitch. So that's a pure example of a man who was a mathematician, but also a musician. Also, there are patterns all throughout music, just like there are patterns all throughout math. There really is a relationship there that should never be separated. Here are my resources. Thank you for listening.